Welcome to our worldwide community gathering in July. I don't know about you guys, but boy, I can't believe it's July and July 19th, no less. This year is speeding by wonderfully with all the love in my heart. It's so wonderful to see so many familiar faces pop on. And welcome to all the new faces. It's wonderful to see you too. We are so happy to have you here tonight for our worldwide community gathering, The Power of Spiritual Psychology and Sacred Activism. I know I have been looking forward to this ever since the email went out, even a little bit before because I got a sneak preview. And I just am really, really excited about tonight. We have a special guest and we're just so excited to dig into this topic. Before we do, I'm going to toss it over to Ron and Mary and they're going to center us.
So welcome, everyone.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, shall we? All right, here we go. Lord God of all creation, we thank you for this opportunity to come together, and we ask that we all be filled, surrounded, protected, inspired, and oh, dare I say it, just totally filled with that loving energy that in fact is our essence. We are so grateful for these gatherings, for this time that we choose to take for ourselves the center and the light. And as always, Lord, we ask that this light be extended throughout the planet, and why stop there, the universe. And for this time together, we give our thanks. So be it.
Thank you. That was
Eliza, I will go ahead with a 5-minute peace meditation. Thank you.
Great.
All right, so beautiful. I just once again invite you to bring your awareness to your heart. We have a beautiful topic tonight, sacred activism, which is really action for this time that we find ourselves in. We have a beautiful quote by Andrew Harvey, where he speaks about sacred activism, and I'm going to really share it as the focus of our meditation. So I just invite you to go into your heart, to listen with the ears of your heart, the wisdom of your heart, and see what finds resonance. A spirituality that is only private and self-absorbed, one devoid of any authentic political and social consciousness, does little to halt the suicidal juggernaut of history. On the other hand, an activism that is not purified by profound spiritual and psychological self-awareness and rooted in divine truth, wisdom, and compassion will only perpetuate the problem it is trying to solve, however righteous its intentions. When, however, the deepest and most grounded spiritual vision is married to a practical and pragmatic drive to transform all existing political, economic, and social institutions, a holy force, the power of wisdom and love in action, is born. This force I define as sacred activism. And those are the words of the spiritual teacher, Andrew Harvey. So let us meditate on this power of wisdom and love in action.
Thank you. That was so beautiful. I love being able to take the time and go into our hearts and center in that way. And before we dig into the topic tonight, I want to take a minute and introduce you all to our very special guest who is joining Ron and Mary for tonight's topic. Oh, I love this man so much. We are so excited to have Kirk Sauder from the USM class of 2006 joining us. Not only is Kirk a man who I know and love, but he is a renowned leadership and executive coach who has created initiatives with visionary brands and coached visionary leaders towards positive impact at scale. He is truly a wonderful example of soul-centered living and authentic leadership in action, a creative and genuinely caring consciousness who embodies the empowering principles and practices of spiritual psychology. I am honored to introduce you to Kirk Sauder.
Well, thank you so much, Eliza, and thank you, everybody. It's beyond an honor to be here. When Ron and Mary sent me the note, it was almost a shock because this is a topic that is so close to my heart right now. And there it was. And it's a little bit strange, I have to say, to be sharing space with Drs. Ron and Mary Hulnick. But I'm going to make the best of it. And, this work has been such an impact on my life. I can say that there's been 3 before and after moments to my life. One was meeting my wife, Patricia, who's also a USM grad. The other was having my children. And the third was USM. And the great thing about that third before and after moment was it got to create positive impact on the other two moments and what became of those in my life. So I am so honored to be here. Thank you, Ron and Mary.
Beautiful. Well, we're so delighted. And when this topic came forward for the evening, it just automatically you came to mind, Kirk. And I'm so delighted that you're here with us. So maybe we can start with talking a little bit about what is spiritual, what is sacred activism, how does it relate to spiritual psychology, why is it important now? No small questions.
Are those questions to me, Mary, right now?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, when I got the note from you both, it was very strange because this is something I had been thinking about because of my work, because I'm working with leaders who are looking to move into purpose and impact and so on. And your note, Mary, mentioned the kind of the state of the world right now. And I think the really important thing that I hope comes through tonight that we talked about is that it's important that we don't leave here tonight thinking that the concept of sacred activism is a concept that is some type of new agey, esoteric, mumbo jumbo kind of thing. Because from my mind, as I understand it and as I work it, it's actually one of the most important practical ways of looking at change in the world today. And the reason why I say that is if we look at the world and we can look at it through the lens of okay, there's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of bad stuff happening. Or we can look at it through the lens of, and this is something I learned at USM, that, spirit's always moving forward. Evolution is always happening. It might not look like it sometimes, but it's happening. And so, I personally choose to look at what's happening as, just like sitting in a trio at USM and daring to bring my shadow side to the surface so I could work with it and deal with it and let it go. I think perhaps the human race is doing the same thing right now. I don't think there's new things arriving on the planet. I think these are things that have always been there that now we get to look at and shed. And so where sacred activism comes in is, and Ron and Mary, maybe you've heard this quote before, but the issue isn't the issue, how we relate to the issue.
I remember that.
You've heard that one, okay.
I've heard that, yes.
I thought I made it up, but so, we can look at all that and get into the level of conflict. That's what I see happening a lot, where activism today is taking on the same kind of energy and level of conflict as the problems that it's seeking to solve. That is, looking at basic issues that are about againstness, like racism and so on, and approaching it with againstness. And it's understandable why that happens. It's understandable that how we can be outraged and angry at what we see and want to, move into that. But the truth is, I think we have at least 5,000 years of evidence that shows that, approaching againstness with againstness does not yield, positive results. And so in the end, like how I would define sacred activism is it's activism that actually works, because it's activism that's rooted not in the illusion level of duality, the ego, where againstness is. It's activism that is rooted like above that level, in the level of what is true and real about the world, the energies of loving and creation. And because it's looking at things from that level, it's capable of bringing new possibilities, transcendent possibilities and creations forward that are not about againstness, but about really solving the problem. And so for me, like what's exciting about this talk tonight is to hopefully like create that kind of new paradigm in people's minds that this is a practical thing. This is a working thing. This is the only way change can happen. So let's not look at it as an esoteric. Let's look at it as a physical world reality way of making things happen.
Well, and what you're saying really speaks to me, Kirk. And what I would add is sacred activism from our perspective, it's so important that it include the spiritual context,
Yes.
that we are divine beings having and using a human experience to awaken. And all these situations and circumstances that we're encountering on the planet now, that we're witnessing, are extraordinary opportunities for awakening, for us to come together in cooperation, to bring forward the creative inspiration that is going to be necessary to address and respond to the challenges that we're seeing, rather than getting bogged down in the reactivity, the conflict, the againstness, and the blame, where then we become stalemated in a certain sense and locked into the polarization, the for and againstness, and basically stay stuck.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Mary, because that was what I was trying to say in terms of, I remember on a lot of USM handouts, there was a quote by Albert Einstein that would say, "A problem cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness that created." And
Right.
there it is, right? And so what I was referring to in terms of lifting up over the level of againstness is lifting up over the level, really, of the duality of the ego into the spiritual reality of our true selves, right? And to be able to look at things through the loving. I had an experience where I was working with a client about a week ago, and I asked them before them if I could have permission to use this tonight, and they said yes, but I'm still going to keep it anonymous. So that illustrates what Mary's saying. She came into the session and she was more livid and angry than I probably ever seen her. And it was right after the Roe versus Wade incident in Washington. I want to be clear, I'm not bringing forward a political opinion here at all. I want to illustrate this idea of elevating to this higher level that Mary was talking about. And so we recognized there was a time where this purging needed to happen. Then she said, my intention today, Kirk, is I know I can't continue to live in this anger. And this is a person who, at the age of 17 would stand outside clinics in the South and help protect girls coming into the clinic so they wouldn't get injured and so on. And she said, but I just know I can't be effective in this kind of energy and anger. And my intention is lift. And so we talked some, and then I said to her, like, what if just as an experiment, you took the anger, there's nothing wrong with that. It's an understandable response situation. But you allowed yourself you're not leaving, you're just putting it off to the side and to close your eyes and just go into, your loving and lift up from there and just look at the situation and just, let me know what you see. Just take 30 seconds. And so she did that. She was willing to try that. Again, not saying goodbye to her anger, just saying I can spend 30 seconds away from that. That's okay. And she didn't last 10 to 12 seconds before all of a sudden I could see her kind of literally the energy of looking at all these things through the higher lens of loving and compassion. And she opened her eyes very excited and also very emotional in what she had seen. And she said, I know what I can do. I know that I can go to these clinics that, there's going to be an increase in 2,800% of women coming into California for this. I can go to a clinic and I can be the one to greet them. And I can sit there with them and tell them that they're loved, that they don't need to judge themselves, that I'm going to be here with them. And I can be a loving source for them through the entire experience. I know I can do that.
Beautiful.
And it was amazing that how that gave her peace. And while the point wasn't, she said, I'm not going to think about scaling it or anything. Just that's what I can do. And because we talk about that a lot, it was not need to scale sometimes, just about doing the loving action. but yet I could tell by the end of the session, her mind, the way it worked was creating a scaled way, a portal way of connecting women to be able to do that. So I love that as an example of how, looking things through the lens of loving still creates effective interventions into what's happening, into the actual suffering, without againstness, but just forness, for the loving of this person.
That's such a beautiful example, Kirk, and the intervention that you made with her, acknowledging the anger, but asking her if she could set it aside and simply move into the loving and then look through those eyes. It's beautiful. And I only wish more people had the awareness and opportunity to make that kind of choice. And maybe that's perhaps in a very foundational way what this work is all about, is that quality of change of perception.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, like, for me, like USM is the ground zero of sacred activism in a way, and that I know all the grads out there and so on would each have their own identical experience of someone they spoke to, and that is what happened, and that's why I'm excited about this evening, because if we can begin to have that idea become, because I think what I hear from people is, I am tired of being angry, but I just don't know what else to do.
I remember years ago, there was a lovely woman in the program, and she was very active in the area of ecological issues at that time. People weren't really speaking about climate change as yet, but she spoke about some things that were going on not far from where she lived, where there was a wildlife habitat. And she said, I get so angry. I find myself in so much againstness relative to the decisions that are being made. And the example you gave is such a good reminder of the power of choice, that we have a choice. We can get angry and go into judgment and blame and fighting against, or we can do the inner work to come into a place of greater peace and neutrality, which then really opens the channel for the creative inspiration.
Yeah, I think that last thing is key, because I think in addition to the tenet of lifting up higher into the level of loving, so the inner transformation that we do to attain that in addition to that then comes, to me, that is another tenet possibly of sacred activism, which is from that place and no longer againstness, but just for the change. The question is not what am I against, but what do I want to create? What do I want to create? Because that really is core to that spiritual energy. Like, if spirit is about something, it's about creation. We're all it, and that to look at, activism from a place of not about pointing fingers and blame, but about what can I create that can help alleviate the issue that we're all working with.
Well, and part of
something, I just wanted to add something. I think that not a lot of people have realized that it's not like when you go into that place of peace within, that you have to then go into the supermarket and go, peace, peace, I'm for peace, you should be too. It's not that we want or need to do that. It's just that if you can just walk through the supermarket, being in that place inside yourself without having to say or do anything other than be in that place inside yourself, you are creating change. You are changing that environment and that moment for everybody who is in that place where you are. They may not realize it. They may not feel it, they may not experience it to their consciousness, but they are in the process of being the creators of change.
Absolutely. Just their light itself and the presence can
That's right.
do that, you know. And I think the other, you know, powerful thing is maybe even a more practical kind of thing in the sense of when we move into the loving, we gain access to that fountainhead of kind of infinite possibility, right? When I'm in ego and againstness, like what neuroanatomists call the focus mode, like, you know, my sense of possibility becomes almost zero. You know, it's fight, flight, or flee, response, all that kind of thing. But when I move into the loving, when I move into that energy and allow new possibilities to emerge, it's a fountainhead of thought and creativity and ideas. And so when we're doing that, you know, you're right. It's not just we're walking around the supermarket saying peace, love, and everything else. It gives us access to actually the level of solutions that we need today, because they need to be solutions that are truly new and transcendent of the issues.
Well, and when you say that, part of what comes forward for me is it makes room for spirit's inspiration.
Yeah.
It makes room for that. We create an opening to receive spirit's inspiration and guidance. And from my point of view, a powerful question is, Spirit, how would you use me here? Particularly, you know, in the areas where you feel a heartfelt tug or calling to be involved, to do something to really make a difference. You wrote something, Kirk, in the notes you sent us, and I'd like to share it because maybe you want to expand on it. I thought it was just beautiful what you said. Spiritual activism is activism powered by and in alignment with the true nature and directive of life, consciousness, and our universe, loving. Sacred activism is therefore not rooted in againstness, blame, shame, duality, right and wrong making, but an activism rooted in the divine energy of creativity, creation, transformation, and evolution, the energy of loving. That's why it works.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. That's why I really look at this not as kind of spiritual woo-ness, but as practicality. Because the truth is that, you know, we do live in a reality that is governed by an energy and a consciousness that has a truth to it, that has a sense of purpose and meaning in it, and those are laws that kind of govern kind of how we evolve and our direction, everything else. So if we're creating solutions that are in alignment with that, it's where I was getting at in terms of creation or developing solutions that aren't based on the illusion of division, but that we're all one, those types of things, that in the end, that's the only thing that's going to be effective, because it's the only thing that is really based on the core physics, spiritual physics of our world. So it's in the end, you know, that's why it's the only one that can really work in terms of truly lasting, enduring, you know, solutions.
Yes. You know, when you say that, I'm reminded of one of the foundational principles of spiritual psychology. Well, two of them, actually. One of them is really that the outer proceeds from the inner. And a second one is that we are each divine beings having and using a human experience. And we come here with what we refer to as spiritual curriculum. And the spiritual curriculum includes the issues that we came to learn and grow through, but it also includes the gifts that we came to share, the contributions that we came to make. And to me, sacred activism really is a call to awakening, to take the creative responsibility for working with whatever againstness or upset we have inside ourselves that would contribute to the polarization and the divisiveness, to take responsibility for working and bringing that into resolution, but also then to answer the calling of our own heart in terms of what moves us, what inspires us, what brings us alive, the contribution that we're called to make. And the other night, Ron and I were watching 60 Minutes. I think, no, it was the end of CBS Sunday Morning. And they had a beautiful, tiny little segment at the end. And it was about what had happened to a very old woman when her husband had passed. When the husband passed, people came into the home. They saw the deplorable condition of the home, and it was condemned. And she was so old, she had no children. There was really no place for her to naturally go. And this family across the street, that they barely knew each other. And this family was a man and a woman and their 6 children. They decided that they would invite her to live with them. And they invited her into their home. She became a grandmother to their children. And that part in and of itself was profoundly moving.
Then.
Want to tell the next part? But then what was further revealed was that the community had renovated her home. Had just
the community.
The community itself had come forward and done this. And so then it was possible for her to return to her home. What she did was invite the family to come with her.
To live with her in her new home.
And my heart was so inspired. And I love this story because it's person to person. It's not a movement of some kind or a global action. Those things are wonderful too. But I just found this very inspiring because it's a great testimonial to what one person can do or one family can do.
I love that example so much, Mary, because you and I had a quick talk about, again, this isn't about that thing of scale that the ego's attached to. And what it also points to is, activism in it, in the previous orientation, almost felt like a silo, like it was you were an activist and that's what you are. Yes. And that was whereas I think sacred activism is more of a horizontal swatch across all of society's sectors, right? Where that family were sacred activists and that they said, just what can we do? What can we create that's going to help this? And we'll take her in. And what I love is, we may at first even look at that as one person to person thing, but like I'll talk to my clients sometimes, spirit can turn any little act into a giant thing, and so look what happened. They did that inspired their community to do another thing. That inspired the woman to do another thing. And yes. So much so that there it is on television. Now here it is, Ron and Mary Hulnick sharing a story with a bunch of USM grads and others who can take that and use that, to create a diaspora that keeps going. So, the great thing about sacred activism is we don't have to know what the plan is. Spirit's got that. It's, am I acting right now
right
from that place of loving and creation? After that, it's spirits.
Right.
Beautiful. Well said, Kirk. Well, what do you think? Shall we open it up for some questions?
Yeah. I just want to touch on one more thing you said, Mary, if it's okay.
Yes.
The that the first stop is self.
Yes.
That the first stop in sacred activism is the looking with rigor at self, and to see if there's transformation available in us first. Like, to be real, to be honest, like, about a year ago or so, when I was seeing all the againstness, there I was kind of yelling at the CNN screen about it. And luckily I have a USM grad as a wife who said, interesting, a lot of againstness to the againstness. Right. And so it created that process. Wow, that's right. Like, my own ego insidiously entered in its own insidious way. And I think, it's that quote by Christ where he says, before you can take the speck out of your brother's eye, remove the beam from your own, so you can then see the speck and be of service to your brother. And that's why I think that, what you said is so important. And also when you talked about, listening to that, what would you have me do? As part of that, I have a client whose name is Sam Polk, and he created a thing called Every Table, which are restaurants that are serving underserved neighborhoods and blocking the stranglehold of fast food and so on. And when the pandemic hit, it looked like, everything was over, because he was just starting at 10 stores. But he asked that question because his board was saying, circle the wagons, close the doors, fire everybody, try and save some money. And he said, okay, Spirit, what would you have me do? I know that the universe is for me, even here. And he got a call from someone from the city that's saying, hey, we've got he immediately got this call, like, we have a homeless shelter that needs food tonight. And they've been without food all day. We need someone with a commissary kitchen like you guys have. Can you do it? And, he's against, like, certain people say, that's not our business, whatever. He said, no, I asked, that's what we were to do. They did it. And because of them doing it, the next day they get, a call from the mayor's office saying, can you take on the feeding of everybody in this city who can't get to restaurants and so on because of the pandemic? And if with your kitchen, we think you can. And Every Table proceeded to have a year that was 6 times the revenue and 10 times the mission accomplishment because of that one question Sam asked and his ability to answer it without knowing what the long-term plan was. So I just wanted to support what you said, Mary, with real world examples of how important that is to ask that and to trust that.
Just as an aside, sometimes saying yes when you have no idea how the thing you're saying yes to is going to emerge would be a great description of the start of the University of Santa Monica. He had no idea. Total faith.
Well, I think that's an advantage to what Mary said before, that it leaves room for Spirit to come in and to create something beyond which we could have thought or planned, and that's the idea here, was to get co-creation involved so we can arrive at something much better than the little thumbnail our ego would scribble and say, that's where we got to go.
Also what you're saying, Kirk, it just is such a reminder to me that how powerful it is when we can move to the frame of reference that everything ultimately is for us. Even things, situations, circumstances, events that seem so horrific or there's so much suffering associated with them, that they are tremendous opportunities for learning, for awakening, for the heart to open, for human compassion to come forward, for service, just as you were sharing about your first client.
Yeah, and it's not that things aren't necessarily horrific. It's that we have the ability in how we relate to it to convert it, to alchemize it into, a positive impact.
Yes.
So not taking away from the pain or the horrificness that can be for what it's saying, that is that I get to, in my choice and how I relate to this, convert that into something that helps.
Yes. Well, beautiful. Well, I'd love to open it up for some questions on the subject this evening, which is spiritual activism. You may have your own question about how you shift from a place where you're experiencing judgment and againstness, or it may be that you're called in a particular arena, but you're not necessarily seeing how you could move forward with that, whatever the question is. And at the same time, I want to bring your awareness to the handout that was posted at the beginning of the event and invite you to take an opportunity to look at it, to look at the self-reflective questions. Ron, would you read these questions, the 4 questions here?
Don't they need to read this first?
Well, they could or couldn't. I think we've given enough context. Maybe you can read them from here. It'll be easier.
Okay. So we invite you to center yourself in your loving. Gosh, how USM is that? And make your own notes in response to the questions. And these are things that, they're just going to come to you as the evening progresses. Just be aware. I'm noticing a way I'm demonstrating sacred activism, love in action, A, in my way of being, and B, in my actions, in my everyday life is, then you'd write down what that way is. And then 2, when I look around the world, witnessing all the challenges humanity is experiencing at this time, one way I'm called to make a meaningful contribution is, a vision I hold in my heart for our world is, and one step I can take to move this vision into manifestation is, and notice we're not committing to anything here. It's just seeing what's present in your own consciousness.
All right. Okay, so, and I see we have some current students and some grads who have raised their hands, and we'd love to hear from new people too. So,
TJ.
And we ask that you go to the heart of your question, and if there's a particular one of us that you would like to respond, you can make that known, and more than one of us may respond as well. So, Terry Jo, how about if we start with you?
Oh, wonderful. Hi, Ron and Mary. Hi, Kirk.
Hi.
So glad to be here. I love these calls and I love this topic. Everything that's been shared has been so insightful. My question is about dealing with family issues around beliefs and activism. And one of the things that comes up for me is, and I'm sure I'm not alone, a feeling of exhaustion, just realizing the things that are in front of us. And then when we have family members, I happen to have several family members that are against kind of the way, in my opinion, moving forward. They're much more conservative and holding on to the past and wanting things to go back to the way they were 50 years ago. You can kind of get a feeling what my beliefs are. And particularly my dad is the hardest one for me. And I work with freeform writing. I talk to my higher counselor very regularly, and I get it on a spiritual level. Like I get why there's these differences and everything's serving our awakening and God's the one in charge of it all. I'm really understanding that. But my dad has gotten so much angrier, and he watches a lot of Fox News, and he's just a different person. And
we seem to have a glitch
while
here.
I can hold the loving, my heart is just in him. And, so I'm just wondering what, I'm just realizing now as I'm talking, I could call in the light before I'm around my father. But I also just feel this heartbreak, like this little, especially around male female issues like the Roe versus Wade, for example, women's rights, women's bodies rights. It just hurts, to feel my own father. It feels like betrayal. And so part of me is wondering, like, why did I sign up for that curriculum? So just anything you could do to speak to that, how we can still be in our loving when our heart is hurting so much and we feel exhausted, sometimes thinking of what's before us.
Well, see, it's great that you phrased the question the way that you are. So, especially when we're dealing with relatives, close relatives, it is very, very, very much more challenging than when we're dealing with people that we don't know, because we have, excuse me, we have a stake in the game. And it is much harder when you're dealing with people who are close to you to allow them their own experience so that they can get their own answer without wanting them to get the answer you have for them so much, because it's so hard to see them suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So believe me, we've seen that so often. And this is one of the reasons why how you relate to the issue is such a profound principle. So all you can really ever do, if there's someone who isn't ready to hear what you have to say in a way that you'd like to hear them, inside you can say, well, I may not like it. I accept that that's the way you are. My light is with you. My light and love are with you. But I'm not going to argue with you about it, because then we're both going to be in the negativity.
Mm-hmm.
Easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, it's part of the curriculum.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is now there's this weird wall between us. There is this, it's like he doesn't share things. We don't have a lot to talk about. I mean, because everything is so highly charged.
No.
It doesn't matter what conversation we get into, it will turn into racism, sexism, because it's so amplified right now. Yeah. And so I'm afraid to even bring anything up. And I can tell he is too. And he is adamant that he is right. And I am pretty strongly rooted that I'm right. I mean, I'll just admit that.
Yes. Kirk, do you want to respond to me? Then I can offer something as well.
First, I really understand. I love the quote by Ram Dass where he said, the moment you think you're enlightened, go home and have Thanksgiving dinner with your family, right?
Exactly.
But again, what occurs to me is this idea of the willingness to leave kind of loyalty to our side, to move up to loyalty to our soul, right? And to see from that place of loving, what comes forward. Like I witnessed something once at a USM information evening many years ago, where a gentleman stood up, from not a grad or anything, just right off the street. And he started to talk about, his anger at the world because he's got a young son, and his rant started to escalate. And it started to become about USM, even though he didn't even know USM. He started to just rant about it and what is this place anyway? And And I'm looking at Ron and Mary. I'm looking at him and going, wow, what's going to happen? Because he's like just throwing incredible hand grenades out everywhere. He stopped. There was a pause, and Mary's looking at him the way she looks at us, in class, like looking through us. Mm-hmm. And she said something that was amazing. She said, what I see in you is that you really love your son. Mm-hmm. And he collapsed inside. All his anger, all his resentment, everything, it just collapsed, and he started to sob because that was it. He just loved his son, really. And, love means we care. Care, we can go into fear. Fear, we can go into anger, and that's what he did. And Mary just looked at him and found the common, deep, loving thing, like through the eyes of loving and compassion. Here's a man who loves his son. I'll just say that. Mm. And it not only diffused the situation, but everybody in that room got to see the power of loving, because then Mary and him had this conversation that was beautiful and healing for everybody. And that's just what, as you were saying what you were saying, Inez, that's what came up into my mind. Share that story, because that's really what this is about, is even in the face of that. And I gotta tell you, it was some pretty heavy stuff coming from that gentleman. Mary just held in the loving and just said, I can see that you really love your son. That changed everything.
Beautiful.
I had forgotten about that, Kirk. Thank you for
maybe we have it recorded.
And Terry, what I would add, what Ron shared with you and Kirk shared with you are beautiful. I encourage you to remember the outer proceeds from the inner. The outer proceeds from the inner. And so my encouragement to you would be to, the way it's coming to me is to get a picture of your dad as a little boy. Mm-hmm. And to have that picture maybe on your writing desk, or it might be on your nightstand. Mm-hmm. And that you would write from your heart to him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
Because it sounds like you are doing freeform writing and so forth. And the other thing, you could precede that with a wonderful process of compassionate self-forgiveness. Mm-hmm. To just clear the judgments from your own consciousness, because we know judgment affects the lens of perception. It skews our perception, so we see someone else in a particular way. And even though it may be subtle, that dynamic and energetic is being transmitted and is creating the experience and relationship between the two of you. So the letting go of the judgments, and then when that's done and you feel like you've wiped the slate clean, then and these could be done at separate times, to write from your heart to the little boy in him.
Mm. Yeah. This is very helpful because I'm assisting second year and he's my relationship project. And I know I did this with my mother, got a picture of her when she was little, and it transformed everything. Yeah. And my dad is such a loving man. So that's what's been really hard for me, because he's tenderhearted. I mean, he's 80. He grew up in a time where tenderheartedness in men was not really encouraged. So to watch him becoming hardened through basically watching a television that's like luring him in all the time and being on his phone like this, like a teenager, it's hard. But and Kurt, your story really helped with that as well, like, because I love my dad. That's why emotion came up. And I'm looking at, why is my dad betraying me? But it's really, I miss my dad. Yeah. I miss my relationship with my dad, and I don't know how to get it back. And there's definitely judgment there, and on my end and on his end as well, but it's my responsibility. And so I see that I am definitely contributing to the wall. And the last thing I want to say is, when his president got elected 4 or 5 years ago, whenever that was, we've had a lot of conflict over my life, and I've been the one that's called him out on a lot of things. I'm his only daughter. He has been very unfaithful to the women he's been married to. and it's affected me as a daughter. And I've called him out on it, and different things as well. Just, a lot of things that I could say they're unethical in my opinion, and most of the world's opinion. But I said to him one time, Dad, do you really think it's an accident that I'm your daughter? And what I'm realizing as that thought was passing through was, do I really think it's an accident that he's my father?
Yeah.
Yes, there it goes.
Yeah, because it's also activated the sacred activism in me. And not because I don't love my father. Like, I see he does that from his wounds, but it's just, there's a part in me that's become activated almost because of that. And he's not necessarily my audience. He's just my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Just our dad. So thank you so much. This is super helpful. And I'm going to get a picture and I'm going to do that. I think it will be very, very sweet.
great. Let us know how it works out.
Yes. And the other thing that just maybe a kind of a footnote here is I encourage you in vulnerability. See, when you started talking about your love for your dad, I really felt your heart open, Terry Jo. I felt the vulnerability. And it's like the arguments, are positionality, their protection, their armoring. And my sense is that the vulnerability may very much be a gateway for you.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. All right. So Chris and Tiffany.
I think they're new.
Hello. I have a question, but I do want to say something. This is our first interaction with this period. Like, we didn't even know what we were coming to really tonight. We had no idea. Just we got an email from something he found. He's usually dragging me into stuff. But I've been a neuropsychologist for about 20 years right now. And I have to tell you guys, this is the most profound thing I have ever heard in the whole time, like in 20 years. I can't believe you guys have been existing for 40 years. Somebody told me that in the Mingle thing. So I feel really honored to be able to hear this. And I just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you.
That really touches my heart. Thank you so much and welcome. We're so happy you're both here. And please feel free to ask your question.
I don't really have a question except for how do I start your school? That's the only
Well, it just so happens.
Well, we are going to be having an event, a workshop at the beginning of September, a 3-day workshop, which is a wonderful introduction to this work. And Eliza will be talking a little bit more about it towards the completion of the evening. But no, we're just delighted to have you here, and thank you for
Thank you so much for everything you all shared. I wrote 4 pages of notes. So I'm just super excited that the universe, spirit has brought this into our lives, and so that we can, because we've been called, according to what Spirit's been saying, to help millions of people. So hopefully this is the pathway in which we're going to be able to do that. Thanks for sharing all your experience.
Well, thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing you in there.
All right. Well, let's see here. Inez.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
A few meetings ago, I heard you mention the responsibility of building a strong financial foundation. Could you please expand on that?
Well, it's not really our topic tonight, Inez, and we would love to have dialogue, conversation with people about sacred activism, the calling.
I mean, I mean it in the context of sacred activism and in the context of allowing for the activism to happen and be practical. And anyway, okay.
I'll just give you a couple of things. First of all, one of the first laws of spirit is take care of yourself so that you can help take care of others. We wrote a book on this whole subject quite a number of years ago called Financial Freedom in 8 Minutes a Day. Some of the context at that time was different from the context that exists today. However, the principles and practices are exactly the same. They have not changed at all. So if you've not seen that book, I would highly recommend that you get one. They're readily available. If you
Very
have
good.
to get one, just contact us and we'll get you one.
And what I would add, and Kirk, I think is going to comment too, I would add that what's really important is intention. Intention. What is the intention? What is it that you're called to? What is it that's so deeply in your heart? I have watched people manifest the funds for things that were so heartfelt for them. And many times I have witnessed this. And so I encourage you, there's so many things here, Inez. There's intentionality, there's surrender, there's answering the call to service. The key really to all three of these things that I'm mentioning really is your heart. Kirk, did you want to add?
Yeah, I was. It's very similar to what you said, Mary. But what came forward for me, and as when you spoke, was that, as we get deeper and deeper into the core truth of the calling that's coming through us, there's a great quote by a gentleman named Howard Thurman, who was actually the kind of the mentor godfather to people like Martin Luther King. He never called himself an activist. He called himself a Christian mystic, but Martin Luther King would walk around at all the rallies with his book called Jesus and the Disinherited in his pocket by Howard Thurman. That's the impact he had on civil rights. And he had a quote. He said, ask not what the world needs, ask what brings you alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is more people brought alive. And I think that's brilliant because it takes the load off of thinking for me to know what direction I'm going. I have to see like what's going on out there. Whereas what Thurman's saying and what's my experience too in my work is no, it's about what brings you alive, and trust that in taking whatever steps you can towards that, the universe will act in kind, right? And so we can get to a level of depth in that where there are actions that don't require money. We may eventually get to a place where the action, we're starting a clinic or whatever it is, where eventually we need investment or whatever it is. But if we go to the core heart of it, like I want to serve people this way, or that we find out that our actions in the beginning, all they require, what Mary said, is directional alignment with intention in order to activate a clear signal with our universe. They don't require scale and money. They just require, what action can I take that doesn't require money at all, but it's just directional to what I want to create in the world. And that will always be a possibility for us.
What I'm hearing you say is that when the intention is clear, like the example that you gave of the gentleman that his investors were asking to shut down, and he had a clear intention. Mm-hmm. He had absolutely no plan, but because the intention was clear, spirit just took over and
Mm.
and unfolded things for him.
Yeah, and aligned action too, right? Which is, I don't know where it's going by kind of helping this homeless shelter this one time, but I know directionally it's on my mission, his mission being healthy food is a human right, right? So that's all he needed. But even like years before that, like waking up in bed and saying, I'm a hedge fund director. I know about hedge funds and Wall Street. Why am I getting this calling to bring healthy food to, South Central LA? And instead of taking the action of, well, I don't know that, so I won't do that, he said, I don't need to know that. I can learn that. It's what I'm to do. See,
Yeah.
that was an action that did not require money. It just required choice.
Very powerful, Kirk. Didn't require money, required choice. Anything else, Inez?
No, thank you. I appreciate it. It's very clarifying.
Thank you so much. Laura?
I thank you so much for this evening. And nice to meet you, Kirk. My question is about the space of holding in this whole spiritual activism, right? So it could be that I know reaction isn't what I want. And then I'm waiting for the starter's gun to go. And sometimes it just doesn't, right? So what is the role of holding as a spiritual activist, a spiritual warrior in this environment? I don't know if that makes sense. And then, like how does one know, well, gosh, am I withholding?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Great question.
This is one of the things that we're spending more and more time with people on these days, because so many people have this notion that what they are doing is they're becoming more and more and more spiritual oriented, more spiritual. You can't become more of what you already are. So if you start out by assuming, which from our perspective, of course, happens to be an accurate assumption, and that's the first principle in spiritual psychology, you are a divine, loving being using a human experience for purposes of growth and learning. So we start out there. So anytime that you run into a question or you run into one of these situations, a really good practice to get in the habit of is, wait a minute, wait. I am a divine, loving being. What can I, a divine, loving being, do right now? Well, there are some things you can always do regardless. I can remind myself of my own loving nature and begin radiating that wherever I go and whatever I'm doing. One of my favorite things is to go into Air One food store and just start sending loving as soon as I get in there. You'd be surprised at some of the things that I find happening to me in there. It's not uncommon for people to just go. They go something like, they go like they pick it up on some level. They don't have to know what it is. They don't have to have a name for it. They just got an infusion. So if you start out with that basic awareness, I'm not even calling it an assumption anymore. The basic awareness, my inherent nature is loving. No matter what I think, no matter what I do. How can I say that? Because loving is what the whole universe is composed of. There isn't anything that isn't that. So we start with that, and then build that more and more into our lives. See, it's like Kirk and I have been talking about this recently. What we're really talking about here is bringing new programming to the human computer system that hasn't been upgraded for a long time. Putting new operating systems available that are more in harmony with the reality that we're becoming more and more aware of. Once you accept that reality, the game is really over. I'm a divine being having a human experience and using it, all right. So no matter what's going on, what do I as a divine being do here? And the answer is always going to be the same, regardless of what you do it from as loving a place as you possibly can. I don't know if this is helpful or not. This is the way we're going at USM, more and more of that kind of a basic orientation, because that's the one that most people seem to be having the most challenge with. So I think you get the idea of what we're talking about here.
Kirk, something you want to add?
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that. I really relate to that. I find it might be a little bit of a retro engineering trick for this moment for you, a spiritual retro engineering trick, which is, because I have a lot of clients who have a similar experience. They'll come into a session and say, because of we're moving towards purpose. Oh, Kirk, I've been 2 weeks hanging out and I haven't had the big insight of what brings me joy. And so my question to them will be like, why are you waiting for it to come from the outside? Like, why not be in joy? And by being in joy, what, like Mary said, the outer proceeds from the inner. By being in joy, the spirit, to create equilibrium, will need to bring through you ideas that come from joy that will be joyful for you.
Yeah.
So we don't have to wait and hold necessarily. We can say, I'm going to be in myself that which I wanted to evoke through what I wanted to create anyway. I'm just going to be that and see then how the outer responds to that.
You may as well be what's true.
Well, I love that. What I'm hearing is holding is actually an ego illusion.
Holding is, say again?
An ego illusion. Because I am a divine being.
Right.
Wherever I go, whether I'm aware of that or not, that is true.
That's
Yes.
right, exactly.
Yes.
And so really my opportunity is, we'll wake up to it, because that's way more fun to be awake to that than
That's
to be
right.
I'm holding. Well, I think what I'm waking to in this moment is, that's an illusion.
Well, and it may also be a protection. The idea that I'm holding may be a protection from wholehearted engagement.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah. And I so encourage you in the aliveness and the joy. As Kirk said, it's in the joy that we find purpose and meaning.
Beautiful. Thank you.
During part of the early part of the Ukrainian war, I would, from time to time on the media, see Chef Andre of the World Food Kitchen, and he would be doing what he does. And oh my gosh, just the presence of joy that I experienced with him just touched my heart and inspired me. And it's exactly what Kirk was quoting from Howard Thurman. What the world needs is more people coming alive, who have the aliveness. Because when we're in the aliveness, we're in the spirit, and the heart is open and guiding.
And just to be clear, coming alive doesn't mean that you're any different than you were before. It just means that you've become aware of the essence that is you all the time, regardless, and can be nothing else. All we have to do is say, oh my God, if that's true, what can I do right now to start to live into that truth?
I love this. I love this because the activism for me has been a sacred cow. Like, oh no, it can't be part of what USM has taught me, what I've experienced, because that's so free and joyful. This is serious and horrible. You know, like that quote that you started with, which is the suicidal project, you know, and I'm like, well, I can't do a damn thing about that, but I can be alive. I know how to do that. So I love this. It's like sacred activism rather than sacred cows. Love it.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you could think of it this way. Congratulations. You've just reprogrammed your consciousness and updated your operating system.
Awesome. Love you guys very much. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Wendy?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. Oh, this is something. It's really good because I can really use this because I've been using my love and groundedness to pull myself back into that truth because I'm being pulled in all sorts of ways with really big challenges. And I recognize that they are about social activism. I moved into an apartment building that is subsidized for people who are 65 and older. There's one tenant in here who basically targeted me and kind of went after me and started spreading rumors and all sorts of stuff that for me was very challenging. And I have to admit, there's a part of me that was like, oh yeah, well, I can get you back better. You know, it's just like, no, don't go there. Go inside where the love is. This is not an againstness. This is trying to figure out how can, like my intent was, what do I want? I want peace. I want tranquility. I want a community. So I set out with that intent. And what happened with that person was it escalated to the point where it was just like, this is getting out of hand. And that a lot of people are going to management and complaining. So what I did was just get out the lease and wrote down each one of the things that he had violated. And by the end of it, he had violated all of them. And I didn't do it for anything other than to say, no, this is actually what is going on, and give management the report. Well, as a result, and all of the other people, he has been given a warning. And I keep thinking, why is it always me who has to speak up? Like, I just want to be an introvert and disappear. But no, I get thrown this stuff that it's like, okay, here's your next challenge to stick out like a sore thumb. And so I did that. And then people were still coming to me, telling me things. And I started saying, all I want is peace and love. Like, I just want peace. And I've done what I can do with it and let the cards fall where they may. But I'm not walking on eggshells. I'm not backstabbing. I'm not doing revenge. So I got to check myself on all of those challenges. And some of them were harder than others. You know, it's just like, oh, I could get you good. But I can't do that because that's really not my nature.
Congratulations.
And yeah, it was hard. And so it's simmering down now to a place where it's getting kind of peaceful. Then right when it starts to simmer down, I get woken up by a phone call yesterday. I'm being subpoenaed to court. Why? It's just like, I am the only witness to testify because I happened to be out in the yard and see it, and the police know I did.
Well,
It was an assault, and it was the woman assaulting the man. She's saying he assaulted her. It's like, no, he didn't. That's not what I saw. So again, I have the opportunity to go into a very challenging situation and just say, look, this is what I saw. And I did not see any, like what she's saying is backwards. It's not the truth. So I see it as just another, like, I don't want to do it. I have to go on August 16th. And I'm like, I don't want to. Why me? Like, why do I have to speak up?
because you're the one who has earned the right to relate at that level. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a long time in the making, a long time.
Yeah.
But stay the course and keep doing it and going back in and coming out with whatever tidbit of love you can have to spread around. And just, this is kind of an aside, but it is kind of still a social thing. I also took the challenge upon myself because I am horrible at asking for help. And I got way better at that. But then I started noticing I'm not very good at receiving help. You know, it's like I can ask for it, but I don't want to accept it. So I've been challenging myself to say, excuse me, could you help me? And people are, and they're very kind and gracious, and they don't think a thing of it.
Great.
And that has shown me that really, why do it? Because I can. There doesn't have to be a reason. I'm a human who loves, so I can. And so do other people. And yesterday I was at a store and I couldn't find something that was there the day before. And a woman looked at me and she said, "Are you looking for something?" And so I described it to her and she said, "Oh, they're down here." I'm like, "Thank you." I was mystified. And she said, "Ask and you shall receive." I was like, "Oh, thank you." It was such a powerful message. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your share.
Stay the course and
Thank you. Thank you.
thanks.
All right. So, Arlene.
Deputat, there's two of us, or there were two.
You're the
So-
one.
Okay, thank you. Good to see you too, Kirk. This time. So I just really love this whole topic, and part of what came up to me in this reflection is how my definition of spiritual activism has shifted from when I was quite young and marched on Washington and things like that. And what I realized as I reflect on my life, that the spiritual activism for me has come from a willingness to do kind of what Kirk said about just do what Spirit asks you to do without understanding it. And I just wanted to give you a little update because I think it was maybe last November in one of these gatherings, I talked about how all of a sudden I was now in line to become a chaplain for the Santa Barbara City Fire Department. And it wasn't anything I thought about. It was like, I didn't even know why, but I just went, looks like I'm supposed to do this. I don't understand it. And now I have become a chaplain for the fire department.
Good for you.
No.
And I didn't even really know what the role was. You know, it's a volunteer role, but I really wasn't sure what it was that I was supposed to be doing. And a big part of what I do is go out and support people where there's been a sudden death in their home.
Yeah.
And then I am the person, if requested, usually by the first responders, to bring comfort to these people in whatever way I can. And I mean, you know, most people know I've worked a lot with end of life. So it's like, oh, okay, Spirit is asking me to bring the loving to these people. It's not like praying, or it's just that. So, okay. So I've been on a couple of calls. They didn't train me at all, I have to say. That's the whole story. I was like, and I was called out on a call where the people were Spanish speaking, and there was nobody, there's not a chaplain out of the whatever in the whole county that speaks Spanish. And that upset me in a way. I just thought, how can we serve our community when we don't have this? And so I talked with my leader about it, and he said, well, if you want to make it your mission, he said, we know it's a problem. We've tried a few times, and if you want to take it on, please do. And inside of me, it was such an injustice, kind of like we're not loving these people in the way that is. Anyway, so I asked a friend of mine who is a translator from Mexico, very well known in the community, worked for the district attorney's office. And I asked her if she had some ideas of ways I could go to, because you have to be a chaplain or willing to be a chaplain. You have to have some criteria. And I was like, do you know some priests in the church? Do you have any idea of where I can go? And I was talking to her as a resource. Well, long story short, she decided she wanted to answer the call. And she got interviewed, and she's going to find out. She's in her church group. Happens to be a Methodist, and there's a special credential she can get to be a community chaplain, and she's going to study for it. And I am amazed, because when I asked her, I didn't realize she's a very busy woman with lots of stuff, and she felt that call too. And so I never in my wildest dreams saw any of this as spiritual activism, right? But I guess it's kind of what Kirk was saying. I just don't have to know why anymore. I just don't have to understand what it's like, okay, it'll be revealed.
Right.
It'll be revealed. And then I am so humbled. I am so humbled by what Spirit has in store that I could have never guessed. And so this woman is also a spiritual warrior. And so she said, we're going to strengthen this program, right? We're going to put the training in place. We're going to fix it. We're going to, help. And I went, yeah. And that's why you said yes too, because we're in it together now. The other thing is that when I first came, it was like an old boys network. I was the first woman they had in 10 years. And so it was a really interesting experience. And the good news was, when I first met these people, I was so out of my comfort zone, because I'm so used to our mentality. And this was and I thought, this is healthy for me. This is interacting with people that will teach me a new way of being with them in spite of what I'm receiving. So I'm just, I just want to give you the update. So I'm officially a chaplain. I have a shirt, and I'm out.
Have a shirt.
I have a little shirt that's got my name on it, and I'm out there helping.
Arlene, I'm sorry, Mary, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kirk.
Arlene, first of all, the idea of you as a chaplain helping people, because I know you from the prison project and working with you there, it just touches my heart. Like that community is blessed, and that warms my heart so much. And to your point about, and this is sacred activism, where we lean into what brings us alive, we lean into the compass of joy and take actions that we don't necessarily see where they're going. It was in the prison project a number of years ago where I was coming into a trio with so much angst and concern about the future, because I couldn't see it. I didn't know what it was there. And the resident from the prison who I was trioing with, a woman named CJ, you might know her, she said to me, she goes, "Do you mind if I put the sheet down, Kirk? It's permission to not go on the sheet." And I said, I could tell something was coming into her. And I go, "Please, CJ." And she said, it's I think what you guys would call a download. I said, it's okay. Just, she goes, it's for you. And it's an affirmation for you. And it's the divine unknowing. The divine unknowing gives spirit the chance and the space to make miracles for me beyond which I could have thought, planned, or dreamt.
Oh,
She said that to me. And she flipped reality around on me in a moment, because my ego was, the unknown is dangerous because, what if it doesn't look exactly like my preference? Then it's wrong. So out of the infinite amounts of possibilities, that like the chances are it's not going to be my preference, and that's bad. So fear the future, fear the unknown.
yeah.
Where what CJ said to me was, no, it's the opposite. That unknown lets spirit like kind of see your 10 and raise you 100. And that's what I hear in what you're saying. It's like I asked this woman, and not only she doesn't just give me like a recommendation, she becomes it.
Yeah. Could you say that affirmation again? It's
Yeah.
just beautiful.
The divine unknowing. The divine unknowing gives spirit the space to create miracles for me beyond which I could have thought, planned, or dreamt. So my little thumbnail that my ego says that's what we're aiming for, right? Like the unknown is gorgeous.
Yeah. Kirk, could you send that to me?
Hello.
Yeah. By the way, just because it's coming to me, Arlene, you maybe know, do you know if Rhonda has been released yet?
As far as I know, she is not.
Is not. Okay.
No, she's still there, but as far as I know. But Christiane, remember Christiane?
Yeah,
Christiane, no, she's working in a prison now, I think in Susanville. She's back in on the other side.
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. The thing I was going to offer is that what you shared is such a beautiful example of surrender and letting go of the illusion of control. Arlene.
Well, I learned well from my master teachers.
And just for all the people who may not know, we started this thing in a prison project a whole bunch of years ago because this woman, Rhonda, wrote to me directly. And I found out the other day that of the 36 prisons in the state of California, the Freedom to Choose workshop is now going on in 34 of them. I thought, whoa, that's amazing.
And just a little aside, it's like when COVID stopped the in-person, right? Because we were in person, everybody did a pivot, and they turned it into, those of us who were old enough to remember when your teacher would send worksheets home if you were sick, you did them and somebody brought them back. They turned it into like a mail correspondence program. And because of that, inmates sent them to other prisons that they knew, sent them to their friends. So it really generated that expansion because of the because of that. And it's really extraordinary how, that's another one where it's just like, nobody knew how it was. Who knew? Who knew when we did it 18 years ago that it would be a nonprofit? That's 18 years later. I mean, who knew? But yeah. So anyway, thank you so much. And Kirk, that affirmation, that's a gift I will treasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Straight from CJ. Straight from CJ.
I take it. Love you all. Thanks, everybody.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right. Let's see. The other Arlene.
Is it unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. Well, that was a lot of fun. That was really good. So thank you, Ron and Mary. These last 30 some years have been really extraordinary. There's not been one day that I haven't benefited from graduating and being in school with you guys. Not one day. And so recently, you know, when I saw that the topic for tonight would be a sacred activist, it's kind of like, okay, Arlene, you got to be there. And usually Tuesday nights I have a activist meeting. So it's like in the last year or so, I have become now and realize it's a sacred activist. And I couldn't have spelled sacred activist, just like, and now I are one, that kind of thing. It's like you prepared me for a lot of this, and I'm sorry, I don't have a question so much formulated yet, but I have a lot of thanks, but I'm sure that you could give me anything. I'm not perfect. I'm not doing exactly what I should be doing, perhaps. I do what I can. And just to give you a little background, about a year and a half ago, there was a woman who came to speak to a local church group, and I attended. She is an MD, a lawyer, and the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. And she inspired so many people in that room that we now have a fairly active activist group. And so it has been a real challenge to focus because there's so much going on. It's impossible to keep it all together. I have kind of a general picture of what's happening. And I hear you a lot, Ron, say, how can you stay in the loving no matter what?
Right.
And I say that to the people in my group, you know, when we get really, when we are reacting, when we're really unhappy with the crap that's going on. And so I know that this is the no matter what. And so when a no matter what comes up, I hear your voice, stay in the loving. You know, and that kind of points me back to the principles and, you know, practices that we learn. And so I'm helping to guide other people do that also. I remind them that, you know, how we react is the issue. And I think they get it when I say that. It's not something that they don't get. They get it. And so now we're kind of like this activist group where we all have our little pet little projects that we work on. And I have no idea the outcome, but I thought of something the other day that I could run by you for just another minute, maybe. You know, it seems to me what you were talking about earlier, I've forgotten exactly the words, but it was more like the more people who know what's going on, the consciousness level kind of raises up a little bit, maybe a notch or two. And it's a better or more specific opportunity for more people to respond to the issue, however they're going to respond.
Right.
So the idea was to put an email together, send it to everybody, because somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, and just make a list of those things that we think that we know. And then I went back and forth with that idea because I know that not everybody knows what I'm going to put on this list, right? And then I realized, well, maybe you just need to create what you want by saying it's so. So everybody knows, you know, that the election was stolen. Everybody knows that masks don't work. Well, everybody can have a different point of view about that. And that's not my point. It's just, my point is to, as quickly as we can, as broadly as we can, raise that opportunity for people to stay in their loving no matter what. And they may do that and they may not. So that, I guess I see myself doing that and starting a little, you know, side project. There's other projects that we're doing too, but I don't know. I would open it up to your feedback, whatever there is there. It would be.
You know, what you're saying reminds me of something that goes back quite some time. When I read a story, there was this guy who, I don't remember how often he would do it. Maybe it was once a week. And he would just go through the phone book. And he just at random, he would just like come to a page, stop and go like this down the page and stop. And wherever he stopped, that name, if it had an address to it, he would write that down, the name and the address. If it didn't have an address, he'd just go on to the next one that did. And he essentially wrote a love letter to that person and mailed it. Didn't know the person. I don't even think he had a return address on the thing. It was his way of just sharing love. And he did this on a regular basis. I thought to myself, boy, that's fabulous. No ego attachment whatsoever. You know, dear Bob, I hope you're having a wonderful, loving day. You know, and then it would just go on from there. I thought, whoa, that was amazing.
We had a woman in the second year that did a project like that as well. She was committed to writing a certain number of letters and leaving them in public places.
Oh, yeah.
And the letter would be for whomever found it. And it was really a message of love and support and encouragement. Kind of generic and universal, but yet very heartfelt. So I just encourage you in your intentionality to assist others in choosing the loving and in choosing the loving yourself, Arlene. Kirk, anything you want to add here?
Yeah.
No, that sounds complete to me.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you, Arlene.
Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Mary.
Kristen.
Hello.
Hey, Kristen.
Hey, thank you for calling on me. I am in Mount Shasta now, and I've been here for 3 weeks. And things are just unfolding very, very quickly for me. I've been making friends with a lot of people. I've been
I'm sorry, Kristen, I missed the first part. I didn't quite catch where you are.
I'm in Mount Shasta.
Mount Shasta.
Mount Shasta.
Yes.
Yeah, at Gabriella's house, actually. And things are just really quickly unfolding for me here. And they say that, you know, accidents don't happen with Mount Shasta. It's a very powerful place and powerful energy. And I, through a series of meetings in my school in Chicago that I was working at up until last week, received a message that there's a new person in charge and the proposal that I presented wasn't going to work for them. And it was just kind of like happy on your way type of thing. And so, you know, that's been a huge piece of my service, is working with those kids.
Yes.
So that I found that out on Monday. And I just feel this like very fast kind of orchestration of like the divine hand, you know, lifting me up like so quickly. And there's a part of me that's very aware of this and very kind of in, you know, like watching and going like, wow, this is all so many years of working up to this point. And then there's like my basic self that's like, whoa, you know, hold on here, buckle your seatbelt. And I guess, I mean, I can certainly formulate a question. I don't know if I've given sufficient information to receive feedback. And if, I mean, you're welcome to share any feedback you have just based on what I've shared, or I can formulate a question about, what's my experiences and kind of in alignment with the topic tonight, if you like.
I'm not sure what the question is.
Do we have any?
Just the question is, yeah, do you have feedback? Because what I'm really feeling is like I'm being picked up from my like home and being like just like being called to like just lift and move to a different location. And that's
Well, my encouragement based on what you're saying is to trust that this is for you, Kristen.
Yeah.
Trust that it's for you. I encourage you in your inner focus with your bedtime intentions, asking to be shown and guided what's really for your highest good. I encourage you in stating your intention to Spirit, given my gifts, given my experience, given my abilities, how would you have me serve? Show me in a way that I can recognize and understand.
And thy will be done.
Yeah, that was kind of in alignment with a question about intention and I love the quote about just the affirmation about kind of the divine unknowing and
yes, so powerful too. It's like really in the divine unknowing, Spirit can move.
Yeah.
And as time like what you're in, Kristen, it's such an opportunity for really letting go of the illusion of control, returning inside, for calling on Spirit, and for being clear in your intention and trusting that this is being orchestrated for you.
Yeah. Kristen, I actually have a little like safety word, like breadcrumbs I use in times like this to connect me back to what Mary's saying. And the word is curiosity, in the sense that if I accept that the universe is orchestrating things for me, even if it doesn't look like at the moment, right? A way I can connect to that is if I choose to accept that just for a moment, despite my ego's protestations about my preference not happening, if I can choose to be in curiosity, like, well, what could it be then? Like if it's happening for me, what could this possibly be?
Yeah.
That some magical things happen in that I get to really move into a place of possibility, as opposed to when I'm in this is wrong, there is no possibility. And I think the other magic thing that happens is when I move into a place of curiosity about what's happening, I naturally have to leave the self, that's the small self that's identified with the problem, to be the other self that can look at it.
Right.
And I naturally experience peace then. It's not that everything's all rosy and glory, but like I just the sheer act of curiosity there, needing to separate, to look, gives me that upper hand, and then lets me really look at it and start to imagine ways where this is going to be for me. So
Yeah.
Little safety word, if it's a service to you, then I hope that's great.
Thank you. Yeah, I've actually felt so much of the awareness of the divine orchestration, and but it's really helpful what you shared about the intention and the bedtime intentions, because part of what's so lovely about being here is I feel so much more integrated in my connection with spirituality. And I mean, so is there anything else besides intention, bedtime intentions? Like I do my affirmation and doing it 100 times a day. Is there and then I have other, practices.
Yes.
Is there anything
Yes.
else that you?
One action every day to move you forward into serving in harmony with what's in your heart. Take one small step every single day, outer step, outer step.
Yeah.
And it will bring you into your future. See, it's like the inner does precede the outer. But I remember in one of our first classes, we had a gentleman who was quite financially challenged. And when he asked, when he brought it up and we asked him, what he was doing, he said that he was meditating, and he was meditating for a pot of gold to manifest next to his chair.
Yeah.
I said, well, that is really great. I said, more power to you. And I do encourage you to take action in physical world reality as well.
Yeah.
And we said, for example, have you considered a job?
So
yes, I hear you.
Yes, because you just never know. Some of the stories that have been shared by people here this evening really have that serendipity in it of how they took an action. They didn't know what was going to happen with it, but there was a surprise. Spirit moved, the universe moved.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I would recommend is instead of doing it 100 times, your affirmation, do it 101 times and make that last time come from all of us.
Aw, thank you. I appreciate
Keep
that.
us posted.
I will definitely keep you posted.
Good.
Thank you. And I hear you on the action piece.
The other thing I would I'm just called to share with you, Kristen, also, is sometimes when a person has done a certain amount of foundational spiritual work, it's like all of a sudden, and Carolyn Mays tells this great story, and I know you've heard her tell it. It's like somebody's sitting on their couch, and all of a sudden their angel, in the invisible, says, well, okay, it's time now. Either you can quit your job or we're going to get you fired.
Right.
It's time for you to break up with this person that you're involved in. So, by the way, aren't you hungry for coffee? Because if you go to the coffee shop, you'll see him there with someone else, which will bring it to completion. And by the way, you need to move to another city. And so there are times of convergence like this, where there is going to be an incredible shift.
Yeah.
And in your reality that will bring you into your future. These are not bad times. They are a spiritual convergence. They are powerful. They are moments where, properly utilized, you are being called. And if you answer the call, you're answering the call of loyalty to your soul, of soul's purpose, and of your path of sacred activism.
Go, Kristen, go.
Thank you so much. I feel that, and I really appreciate the feedback.
Yes.
You bet.
All right, beautiful. So we're coming close to the end of our time. Let's see. Kirk, is there anything you'd like to say? Eliza's going to share a few announcements. I'm going to do a little closing blessing. But we're so grateful to you, Kirk. Thank you for your beautiful presence and sharing. I want to give you an opportunity for whatever you'd like to bring forward here by way of completion.
Well, I'm super grateful as well. I mean, it's a USM grad's dream to be able to be just talking with you guys and be present in the space, and grateful for that. Yeah, there was something that came forward for me that, as sacred activists, as we go out into the world, even of activism, that challenge, as someone brought up, of staying in the loving, right? Despite kind of a lot of the againstness and so on that's going on. And I think it's important for us to be aware as we move into those spaces, and I move into those spaces a lot, given what I do and so on, is that to demonstrate that while I am determined to be in my loving and how I relate to everything, that doesn't mean that loving doesn't have the ability to create boundaries and to be direct and to be in action. Because like something I learned from Ron and Mary in classes is in unconditional loving, one of the ones we are unconditionally loving is ourself.
Yeah.
And, in unconditionally loving ourself, we get to be fair, and to ourselves, to give ourselves that same loving and gifts we would give anyone. And it just ending on an example of this, which is my sister passed away a few weeks ago, and while it was a shock of her passing, there was a victory, and as someone who had struggled with addiction for a long time, had put together 11 years of sobriety and impacted dozens of lives, and person after person at her memorial camp said she saved my life and detox. Now, when I back from that, in this example of we can be in the loving and be direct and boundaries, is there was a time where she lived in our house, and when she was still using, and I realized that there was a danger posed in terms of her, fading out and her cigarette lighting the house on fire. And I had to, in my loving, come down to her room and say, Holly, I love you. Tomorrow there's two choices. We're going to come and pack a bag and you're going to go to this rehab that I've lined up that's great. Or we're going to have to pack your car because you're going to have to go because I can't have this danger in my house with my kids.
Yeah.
And I never had to leave my loving because I loved her. This was as much for her as them, as everybody. And it was because of being in the loving and being able to have boundaries and be direct, something I really learned from Mary when I was at USM, that enabled her to choose the rehab and be sober for so many years and impact so many people's lives and be able to pass in that sense of victory, and so as we go out as sacred activists, not forget that we can be in our loving and be very direct and clear in our actions and what we create in the world.
And what I would underscore in that, Kirk, is courageous. I mean, what you did was courageous, honest, caring communication, but very direct. And in that, it was tremendously loving. And look how it transformed. She used it to transform her life.
Yeah. Beautiful. We think we're there's a difference between pleasing and serving is being in the loving and saying what's needed as opposed to what's going to avoid conflict. Yeah.
Right.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Yes. All right, Eliza, so some announcements and then we'll do a closing blessing.
Yeah, and I'm just blown away by tonight. My goodness, it's everything I could have dreamed of and more. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kirk. Your wisdom is just mind-blowing, and also not, because I know you're a USM grad. And Mary and Ron, thank you so much for tonight. And the thing that's really standing out for me, as it's come up over and over tonight, is sacred activism is loving, is being in the loving, really, for ourselves first, and then as it ripples out. And I know I personally learned how to do that at USM. And for me, there's no better place to learn how to do that and learn how to be loyal to your soul. That is really the foundation of this. It's how can we be in our loving? The strongest is by being loyal to our soul. And we have an incredible workshop coming up. I know it's come up tonight. Many people have talked about this incredible education. And we do have our Loyalty to Your Soul workshop coming up September 9th, 10th, and 11th. and then a bonus class on September 27th. A link to the website with information about this incredible transformational workshop has just been put in the chat. It is open to everyone. It is open to newcomers who want to taste and learn this foundational information. You know, loyalty to your soul really is the vehicle where people can learn these skills, the 10 foundational skills that really take us to the heart of what it means to be unconditionally loving with ourselves as often as possible, so that we can be unconditionally loving with the world as often as possible, and really be able to rise above this, you know, paradigm to see how we can serve from our hearts. So again, this workshop is the absolute best place to start. And again, open to newcomers, open to grads who maybe have been out of the magic water for a little while, who want to get back in, who need some refreshing. You know, we go to the gym to make our muscles stronger. We go to loyalty to your soul to make our skills stronger. So again, that information is in the chat right there. I also want to invite everybody to our next worldwide community gathering. My gosh, they just keep getting richer and richer, and I am so grateful to be able to come together in this way. So save the date, August 16th. That will be our next worldwide community gathering. And what a blessing it's been to be together tonight. And Mary and Ron, I will hand it back over to you for our closing blessing.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Eliza. And thank you again, Kirk, and everyone for being here, and our wonderful team that supports these events and makes them happen in virtual reality. So by way of coming to completion this evening, I just invite you to bring your awareness to your heart, to your essential loving nature, and draw in a beautiful breath of loving, of light, and allow this loving to enfold you, to surround, protect, and fill you. And the blessing this evening is a blessing of the path with heart, of following that path, of loving, of joy, of listening to the still small voice within, for noticing that which inspires you, which touches you and moves you. And perhaps in this moment, we can send the light ahead, not only to each one present here, to your unique journey in life, but to all humanity, that we may all awaken more fully into the awareness of our hearts, to our path of loving service, to our opportunity to contribute, to share our gifts, to follow the joy, our soul's purpose, and to be loyal to our soul, and to recognize how fulfilling, meaningful, and empowering that is. And it makes all the difference that being loyal to our side is aligning with the small self, with a consciousness that has misunderstanding of what our purpose is here, but we can answer the call of that higher service, following the path of heart and the path of joy, sharing our gifts. So be it.
So be it.
All right, we're going to unmute everyone so that you can say goodnight. And we're just thank you for being here and for your presence and contributions.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Night, everyone. Make it better.
Love and light.
Thank you.
Love you.
So much love. So much love.
Everyone. Thank you. You're such a beautiful man.
No.
That's great.
Love you, Angela.
Love you guys.
Love you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good
Good to
night.
be with you.
Bye, Kat.
Good night.
Good night, Kat.
Good night.
Good night, Darlene.
Bye, Eliza. Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
And hold in light.